We were making fun of my husband at a church party until he turned to me with hate and said he was breaking up with me. Before the story begins, comment below which city you're watching this video from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Enjoy the story, everyone. The scorching Phoenix sun beat down on Emma Martinez as she hurried through the bustling streets of downtown, her waitress uniform carefully folded in her bag. The familiar sight of La Mesa restaurant, where she had worked for the past 2 years, loomed ahead. Its Adobe-style architecture stood out among the modern buildings, a reminder of the city's rich cultural heritage. At 23, Emma carried herself with quiet determination, her dark eyes holding a depth of resilience that belied her young age. Growing up in a traditional Hispanic family on the outskirts of Phoenix had taught her early on that life rarely offered easy choices, especially for women who dared to dream beyond the boundaries set by tradition. That morning, like every morning, Emma had watched her younger brother Anthony leave for his college classes, his backpack filled with textbooks their parents had eagerly purchased. Meanwhile, her own dreams of attending Arizona State University remained locked away in a box of carefully preserved college brochures hidden under her bed. "Your brother needs the education to support a family someday," her father would say whenever she brought up the subject of college. "You'll find a good husband who will take care of you." The words, though spoken with what her parents believed was love, felt like chains around her ambitions. La Mesa restaurant had become her refuge, a place where she could earn her own money and glimpse a world beyond the confined spaces of her parents' expectations. The restaurant, owned by the prestigious Taylor family, served as a gathering spot for Phoenix's elite, its tables often filled with business people discussing deals over plates of gourmet fusion cuisine. As Emma tied her apron and prepared for another day of serving, she caught sight of Nathan Taylor, the owner's son, directing the kitchen staff with his usual authoritative presence. At 28, Nathan cut an impressive figure in his tailored suits, his blonde hair and green eyes drawing admiring glances from female customers and staff alike. "Emma, table 7 needs attention," called out Martha, the head waitress, interrupting Emma's momentary distraction. She hurried to the table, notepad ready, her professional smile masking the thoughts that often consumed her during quiet moments. Thoughts of education, independence, and a life where she made her own choices. The day progressed like any other until the dinner rush, when everything changed. A particularly difficult customer had been berating Emma for a minor mistake with his order, his voice rising above the quiet murmur of dinner conversation. Before she could respond, Nathan appeared at her side. "Is there a problem here, sir?" His voice carried the smooth authority of someone accustomed to command, effectively diffusing the situation. After the customer calmed down and apologized, Nathan pulled Emma aside. "You handled that well," he said, his green eyes meeting hers with unexpected warmth. "Would you like to join me for coffee after your shift to discuss customer service techniques?" There was something in his smile that made Emma's heart skip a beat, despite her natural caution. That evening, as the desert air cooled and the city lights began to twinkle against the darkening sky, Emma found herself sitting across from Nathan at a small cafe near Camelback Mountain. Their conversation flowed easily, moving far beyond customer service to their dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. Nathan spoke of his ambitions to modernize the restaurant, his passion for business evident in every word. Emma, normally guarded about her personal life, found herself opening up about her thwarted educational dreams and the weight of family expectations. "You know," Nathan said, leaning forward, "there's nothing stopping you from taking night classes. The community college has excellent programs." His words, spoken with genuine interest rather than judgment, sparked something in Emma, a dangerous hope that perhaps change was possible. As they walked to their cars, the Phoenix skyline glowing in the distance, Nathan surprised her by asking for her phone number. "For professional reasons, of course," he said with a smile that suggested otherwise. That night, lying in her bed in her family's modest home, Emma stared at the ceiling fan slowly rotating above her. The evening replayed in her mind, each moment tinged with both excitement and apprehension. She knew that entering Nathan's world could change everything, for better or worse. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Thank you for a wonderful evening. Would you like to get coffee again tomorrow?" Emma's fingers hovered over the keypad, her heart racing. She thought of her parents sleeping down the hall, of their expectations and restrictions. She thought of Anthony, pursuing his dreams while hers gathered dust. She thought of the life she wanted versus the life she was expected to live. Finally, she typed her response. Yes. As she drifted off to sleep, Emma couldn't know that this simple three-letter word would set in motion a chain of events that would transform her life in ways she never imagined. The stars twinkled over Phoenix, bearing witness to the beginning of a story that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, family, and most importantly, herself. The weeks that followed transformed Emma's life into a delicate balance of secrets and possibilities. Her coffee meetings with Nathan became more frequent, each one feeling like a small act of rebellion against the carefully structured world her parents had built around her. They met in quiet cafes on the edges of Phoenix, where the possibility of running into someone who knew their families was minimal. Nathan was unlike anyone Emma had ever known. He listened when she spoke, really listened. His eyes focused intently on her as she shared her dreams of studying business administration. He encouraged her to think beyond the limitations others had placed on her, and for the first time in her life, Emma felt truly seen. "You have so much potential," he told her one evening as they walked through the desert botanical garden, the setting sun painting the cacti in shades of gold and purple. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." His hand found hers among the desert flowers, and Emma felt her heart race at the contact. At work, they maintained a professional distance, though Emma caught Nathan watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. The other waitresses noticed too, their whispered conversations falling silent whenever she entered the break room. Martha, the head waitress, pulled her aside one day with concern in her eyes. "Be careful, Emma," she warned. "The Taylors, they have certain expectations about who their son should be with." But Emma saw something in Nathan that others didn't. A gentleness beneath his privileged exterior, a desire to break free from his own family's expectations. As summer heat gave way to autumn, their relationship deepened. Nathan began teaching Emma about the restaurant business during their secret meetings, sharing insights about management and operations that fascinated her. She soaked up the knowledge, her mind already spinning with ideas for improvements and innovations. One evening, after closing time, Nathan led Emma to his office. "I have something to show you," he said, pulling out a stack of enrollment papers for the local community college. "I've been looking into business courses. You could start next semester." Emma stared at the papers, her vision blurring with tears. "My parents would never allow it," she whispered, though her heart leaped at the possibility. "Then don't tell them," Nathan replied, taking her hands in his. "I'll help you figure out the logistics. You deserve this chance, Emma." Before she could respond, he kissed her. The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment, everything falling away except the feeling of his lips on hers and the promise of a different future hovering just within reach. That kiss changed everything. Their relationship shifted from secret meetings to something deeper, more urgent. They began making plans, careful, intricate plans that would allow Emma to pursue her education while maintaining the facade her parents expected. Nathan suggested they marry quietly, without fanfare. "We could do it at the courthouse," he proposed one night as they sat in his car overlooking the city lights. "Just us. No families, no expectations. Then you could move in with me, take classes, build the life you want." The idea was terrifying and exhilarating. Emma thought of her parents, of their reactions if they discovered their daughter had married without their blessing. She thought of Nathan's mother, Patricia Taylor, whose cold glances whenever she visited the restaurant made it clear she viewed the staff as beneath her social station. But when she looked at Nathan, saw the hope and love in his eyes, she found herself nodding. "Yes," she whispered, just as she had that first night when he asked her to coffee. Another simple word that would alter the course of her life. They were married 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning when Emma had told her parents she was picking up an extra shift at the restaurant. Nathan wore a business suit, Emma a simple white dress she had bought at a small boutique in downtown Phoenix. The ceremony was brief, clinical almost, but when the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Emma felt as though she was standing on the edge of a new world. That evening, she returned home to pack a small bag, telling her parents she was staying with a friend from work. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she consoled herself with the knowledge that soon she would be able to tell them everything. Once she had proven she could succeed on her own terms, Nathan had arranged a small apartment for them in the Biltmore area, far from both their families' usual haunts. As Emma placed her few belongings in the closet beside Nathan's expensive suits, she felt a mixture of triumph and trepidation. She had done it, broken free from the constraints that had bound her for so long. But as she lay in bed that night, listening to Nathan's steady breathing beside her, a small voice in the back of her mind wondered if she had traded one set of expectations for another. She pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the class schedule she would begin next semester and the promise of a future she had chosen for herself. Unknown to Emma, across town, Patricia Taylor was opening an envelope containing information that would shatter the fragile new life she and Nathan had begun to build. The stars that had witnessed their beginning now hung heavy over Phoenix, harboring secrets that would soon come to light. The autumn winds swept through Phoenix, bringing with them a change that would rock Emma's carefully constructed world. She had been married to Nathan for just over 2 months, juggling her waitressing job with evening classes at the community college, when Patricia Taylor made her move. It happened during the restaurant's annual staff appreciation dinner, an event that Patricia had always overseen with ironclad control. Emma had arrived separately from Nathan, maintaining their careful charade, but throughout the evening she caught his secret smiles from across the room. The elegant ballroom of the Arizona Biltmore sparkled with crystal chandeliers and fine china, the staff dressed in their best attire rather than their usual uniforms. Emma wore a modest blue dress she'd purchased with her first semester's textbook money, feeling both proud of her accomplishments and oddly out of place among the polished surfaces and practiced smiles. Patricia Taylor commanded attention as she clinked her crystal glass, her designer dress and impeccable makeup a stark contrast to the working-class staff gathered before her. "Family," she began, her voice carrying across the hushed room, "is everything to the Taylors. Our restaurant's success is built on tradition, loyalty, and knowing one's place." Her eyes found Emma's across the room, a smile playing at her perfectly painted lips. "Which is why I'm deeply concerned about recent developments that threaten our restaurant's reputation." She pulled an envelope from her clutch and Emma's heart stopped as she recognized the courthouse letterhead. "It seems one of our staff members has been harboring delusions of grandeur," Patricia continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "Emma Martinez, or should I say, Emma Taylor. Did you really think you could secretly marry into our family without consequences?" The room erupted in whispers. Emma felt the floor sway beneath her feet as dozens of eyes turned toward her. She searched for Nathan, finding him frozen beside his mother, his face drained of color. "Nathan, darling," Patricia turned to her son, "surely you can't be serious about this arrangement? The daughter of a gardener sneaking her way into our family? What would your father say if he were here?" Emma watched as Nathan's jaw tightened, waiting for him to defend their love, to stand up to his mother as he had promised he would. Instead, he remained silent, his eyes fixed on some distant point above the crowd. "Mother," he finally spoke, his voice strained, "perhaps we should discuss this privately." Patricia's smile widened. "Nonsense. The staff is family, remember? They deserve to know how this waitress has been plotting to elevate her status. Tell me, Emma, was it the Taylor fortune that attracted you or just the Taylor name?" Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. 2 months of marriage had taught her that Nathan's world operated by different rules than her own. She had learned to navigate the subtle prejudices and barely concealed disdain of the social circles he inhabited, but this public humiliation was beyond anything she had prepared for. "I love your son," Emma stated simply, her voice carrying clearly despite its softness. "And he loves me. We married because we want to build a life together, not because of your money or your name." Patricia's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Love? My dear, people like us don't marry for love alone. We marry to preserve legacy, to protect what generations have built. Nathan understands this, don't you, darling?" Emma turned to her husband, silently pleading with him to remember their quiet moments together, their shared dreams, their promises to face the world as partners. Nathan finally met her gaze, and in that moment, she saw something crack behind his eyes. He began, then straightened his shoulders, slipping into the polished businessman she had first met. "Mother's right. I've been indulgent. This situation has gotten out of hand." The words hit Emma like physical blows. Around her, the whispers grew louder, faces both sympathetic and scandalized watching the drama unfold. Martha, the head waitress who had warned her months ago, placed a supportive hand on her shoulder. "Well," Patricia declared, satisfaction evident in her tone, "I'm glad that's settled. Emma, you'll find your final paycheck includes a generous severance package, provided you agree to a quiet annulment. We'll need those papers signed by the end of the week." Emma stood rooted to the spot, her world crumbling around her. The past months played through her mind like a movie, the secret meetings, the courthouse wedding, the classes she had started taking, believing she was finally building the life she had always dreamed of. All of it built on a foundation as fragile as spun sugar. As the crowd began to disperse, their dramatic entertainment for the evening concluded, Emma felt a strange calm settle over her. She looked at Nathan, still standing beside his mother, and saw him not as the man she had fallen in love with, but as the boy who had never learned to stand on his own. Without a word, she removed her wedding ring, the simple band they had chosen together at a small jewelry store downtown, and placed it on the table beside her untouched dinner plate. The soft clink it made against the fine china seemed to echo in the vast room. She walked out of the ballroom with her head held high, ignoring the whispers that followed her. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped outside, and only then did she allow herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. But as she stood there under the stars that had witnessed so many of her hopes and dreams, Emma realized that Patricia Taylor had inadvertently given her something precious: the truth. And sometimes the truth, however painful, was the first step toward genuine freedom. The weeks following the staff appreciation dinner passed in a blur of paperwork and painful revelations. Emma discovered that Patricia Taylor's influence extended far beyond the restaurant's walls. Within days, she found herself locked out of her community college classes, her tuition mysteriously refunded, and her reputation in the local restaurant industry mysteriously tarnished. She had returned to her parents' home, swallowing her pride as she explained a heavily edited version of events. They accepted her back with a mixture of sympathy and knowing looks that seemed to say, "This is why we wanted to protect you from that world." Their acceptance was both a comfort and a reminder of everything she had tried to escape. But Emma Martinez was not the same person who had left their home 2 months ago. The pain of Nathan's betrayal had hardened something inside her, transforming her quiet determination into steel resolve. She spent her days sending out job applications and her nights researching online education programs that she could fund herself. It was during one of these late-night research sessions that she received the news that would change everything again. The home pregnancy test's positive results stared back at her from the bathroom counter, and Emma felt her carefully laid plans shifting once more. She told no one, not even her parents, as she processed this new development. The baby, her baby, deserved better than to be born into a web of scandal and social manipulation. Emma began taking extra shifts at the small diner where she had found work, saving every penny she could. One morning, as she served coffee to the early breakfast crowd, a familiar face walked through the door. Martha, her former supervisor from La Mesa restaurant, settled into a booth in Emma's section. "I hoped I'd find you here," Martha said warmly. "I've been asking around, trying to track you down." She pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "I have a friend who runs a domestic staffing agency. They're looking for someone reliable and discreet to work for a high-profile client." Emma studied the card skeptically. "I don't know if I want to work in another wealthy household, Martha. I've learned my lesson about that world." Martha's eyes softened. "Not everyone is like the Taylors, Emma, and from what I hear, this position pays well and includes accommodation. The client is looking for someone who can start immediately." The mention of accommodation caught Emma's attention. She had been wondering how long she could continue living with her parents, especially once the baby started showing. Still, she hesitated. "The client is Daniel Rodriguez," Martha continued, watching Emma's reaction carefully. "He's new money, not old like the Taylors, made his fortune in sustainable technology, recently lost his mother, and needs someone to manage his household while he focuses on expanding his business." Emma had heard of Rodriguez Technologies. Their solar power initiatives were transforming Phoenix's energy landscape. She picked up the card, turning it over in her hands. "Why me?" "Because you're smart, capable, and deserve a second chance," Martha replied simply. "And because I told my friend about your situation with the Taylors." "Mister," Rodriguez has had his own run-ins with that family. He's not particularly fond of how they do business. That evening, Emma called the number on the card. The agency owner, Angela, was professional and direct, setting up an interview for the following morning. As Emma prepared for bed, she placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to her unborn child. "We're going to build something new." The interview took place at Rodriguez's stunning home in the Paradise Valley area, where modern architecture blended seamlessly with the desert landscape. Emma sat in a sunlit office, explaining her experience and skill set to Angela, while trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "Your references from the diner are excellent," Angela noted, "and Martha speaks very highly of your work ethic. There's just one more person you need to meet." She pressed an intercom button, and moments later Daniel Rodriguez entered the room. He was younger than Emma had expected, probably in his mid-30s, with kind eyes and a presence that somehow managed to be both commanding and approachable. Unlike Nathan's carefully cultivated polish, Daniel's confidence seemed to come from within. "Ms. Martinez," he greeted her, taking a seat. "I understand you have experience in restaurant management and are pursuing business studies." Emma blinked, surprised that he had this information. "I was, yes, though circumstances have put those studies on hold." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "I believe in second chances, Ms. Martinez, and in recognizing potential where others might not bother to look." He shared a knowing glance with Angela. "The position includes private quarters, health insurance, and flexible hours that would allow for online studies, should you wish to continue your education." Emma felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "That's very generous, Mr. Rodriguez." "Daniel, please." He smiled, and Emma noticed that it reached his eyes. Unlike the practiced social smiles she had become accustomed to in Nathan's world. "There's just one thing you should know before accepting the position. My mother's passing was recent. This house holds many memories of her. The person who takes this job needs to understand they're not just managing a household, they're helping to preserve her legacy while allowing the space to evolve into something new." The honesty in his voice touched something in Emma. She thought of her own situation, of the new life growing inside her, of the delicate balance between honoring the past and building a future. "I understand," she said softly. "Sometimes the hardest part of moving forward is knowing which parts of the past to hold on to and which to let go." Daniel studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "When can you start?" Emma's first weeks working at the Rodriguez estate settled into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. The modern house, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and desert-inspired architecture, became more than just a workplace. It became a sanctuary. Her private quarters, a comfortable apartment above the garage, offered both independence and security, something she hadn't realized she desperately needed until she had it. Daniel proved to be an employer unlike any she had known. He valued her opinions, actually implementing her suggestions for household management and entertaining. When she reorganized his home office filing system, making it more efficient, he didn't just notice, he asked her to help streamline similar systems at his company's headquarters. "You have a natural talent for organization and management," he told her one evening as they reviewed the week's schedules over coffee in the kitchen. "Have you considered finishing your business degree?" Emma's hand instinctively moved to her stomach, now showing the slightest curve at 4 months pregnant. "Eventually," she said carefully. "Right now I'm focusing on other priorities." Daniel's eyes followed her movement, but he didn't comment. Instead, he pulled out his laptop. "I've been looking into online programs at ASU. They offer full degrees, and many of their business courses align with what we're doing at Rodriguez Technologies." He turned the screen toward her. "Just something to think about." These quiet moments with Daniel became increasingly frequent. He often worked from home, and Emma found herself drawn into discussions about business strategy, sustainable energy, and the future of Phoenix's development. Unlike Nathan, who had taught her about business to mold her into his world, Daniel seemed genuinely interested in her perspective. The baby grew steadily, though Emma had yet to share her pregnancy with anyone except her doctor. She had started wearing looser clothing, but she knew she couldn't hide it forever. The thought of telling Daniel filled her with anxiety, not because she feared losing her job, but because she had come to value his respect and didn't want it tainted by her complicated past. One morning, as Emma was arranging flowers in the living room, Maria Rodriguez's prized roses still bloomed in the garden. She heard voices from Daniel's office. Through the partially open door, she recognized Patricia Taylor's distinctive tone. "Daniel, be reasonable," Patricia was saying. "Rodriguez Technologies is expanding too quickly. A partnership with Taylor Enterprises could provide the stability you need." "Thank you for your concern, Patricia." Daniel's voice was polite but firm. "But I prefer to maintain our independence. Our company values don't align with your traditional approaches." "This isn't about business, is it?" Patricia's voice sharpened. "I heard you hired that Martinez girl." "Really, Daniel? Taking in Taylor family leftovers? What would your mother think?" Emma's hands trembled, nearly dropping the crystal vase. Before she could move away, Daniel's response rang out clearly. "My mother would be proud that I hired someone based on their merit rather than their social status. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to attend to." The door opened fully, and Patricia Taylor emerged, her face flushed with anger. She froze upon seeing Emma, her eyes narrowing as they took in Emma's loose-fitting dress and the subtle changes in her figure. A calculating smile spread across her face before she swept past, leaving the scent of expensive perfume in her wake. That evening, Emma found Daniel in the garden, sitting on the bench where his mother had often tended her roses. Without preamble, she said, "I need to tell you something." Daniel looked up from his tablet, his expression open and attentive. Emma took a deep breath and began speaking, telling him everything, about Nathan, the secret marriage, the humiliation at the dinner, and finally the pregnancy. Throughout her story, Daniel remained silent, his face thoughtful. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "Does Nathan know about the baby?" Emma shook her head. "No one knows except my doctor. I've been afraid of how it might be used against me." "Used against you?" Daniel's voice was gentle but carried an edge of anger. "Emma, this is your child. No one has the right to use that against you." "The Taylors have influence," Emma said softly. "Look how quickly they managed to get me removed from my classes, blacklisted from restaurants." Daniel stood, pacing the garden path. "Those classes, was that at Phoenix Community College?" Emma nodded, watching as he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Angela? Yes, it's Daniel. Remember that educational foundation my mother started? I need you to look into something." He walked a few steps away, speaking quietly into the phone. When he returned, his expression was determined. "You're going to finish your degree, Emma. The Maria Rodriguez Educational Foundation provides scholarships to working parents pursuing higher education. You're exactly the kind of candidate my mother had in mind when she started it." Emma felt tears welling in her eyes. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because my mother taught me that true success isn't about maintaining power, it's about sharing it," Daniel said, his voice soft with memory. "She built this garden from nothing, just like she helped me build the company. She believed in giving people the tools to grow." He gestured to the roses blooming around them. "These flowers don't care who planted them or what family they came from. They just need the right environment to thrive." He turned to Emma, his eyes serious. "You and your child deserve the same chance." As the desert sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Emma felt something shift inside her. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, she wasn't just surviving, she was planning for a future that somehow felt safer and full of more possibility than anything Nathan had ever promised. The news of Emma's pregnancy spread through Phoenix's upper circles like wildfire after Patricia Taylor's visit. Within days, Nathan appeared at the Rodriguez estate's gate, demanding to see Emma. Daniel's security team, already briefed on the situation, turned him away, but Emma knew it was only the beginning. She was 6 months pregnant now, the curve of her belly impossible to hide. Her parents, when she finally told them, had been surprisingly supportive. Her mother cried not from disappointment but from regret that Emma had felt she couldn't come to them sooner. Her father, usually so traditional, had simply hugged her and whispered, "You are stronger than we ever knew, Mijita." Daniel had become increasingly protective, though never in a way that made Emma feel powerless. He installed a state-of-the-art security system and made sure she had a direct line to his personal attorney. When she protested that it was too much, he simply said, "Consider it investment protection. You're one of my company's most valuable assets now." She had started her online classes, throwing herself into business studies with renewed determination. Often, she and Daniel would discuss her coursework over dinner, their conversations flowing easily from academic theory to practical application in his company. One evening, as they sat in the kitchen sharing takeout from their favorite Thai restaurant, Daniel asked, "How would you feel about taking on more responsibility at Rodriguez Technologies?" Emma looked up from her pad Thai, surprised. "What kind of responsibility?" "We're launching a new initiative, sustainable restaurant management, using solar power, water conservation, waste reduction. Your experience in the restaurant industry, combined with your business study." He trailed off, watching her reaction. "You want me to be involved in the project?" Emma felt a familiar flutter of excitement, the kind she used to get when dreaming about her future before reality had intervened. "I want you to lead it," Daniel corrected. "Once you've completed your degree. The timing would work well with your maternity leave." Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her heart sank as she read the message. "We need to talk about our baby. Meet me tomorrow or I'll have my lawyers contact you." "Nathan." Daniel noticed her expression change. "Nathan?" he asked quietly. Emma nodded, showing him the message. Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "What do you want to do?" The question startled her. Throughout her pregnancy, everyone had tried to tell her what to do, her parents, her doctors, even well-meaning friends. Daniel was the first person to simply ask what she wanted. "I think," Emma began slowly, "I think I need to face him. On my terms, not his, but not alone." Daniel nodded. "My office tomorrow morning. Angela can be there as a witness, and we'll have my attorney on standby." The next morning, Emma sat behind Daniel's desk, a position he had insisted on. "Power dynamics matter," he had said with a slight smile. "Make him come to you." When Nathan entered, he faltered slightly at seeing Emma in the power position. She had chosen to wear a fitted maternity dress that emphasized her pregnancy, another conscious decision about presentation and power. "Emma," Nathan began, his voice carrying that familiar smooth confidence that had once charmed her. "You should have told me about the baby. Like you told your mother about our marriage." Emma's voice was steady. "Or like you told everyone at the appreciation dinner that I was just being indulgent." Nathan had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That was complicated. Mother was upset, but she's come around now. She realizes a grandchild changes things. We can make this work, Emma. Come home." "Home?" Emma's laugh held no humor. "You mean back to hiding? To pretending I'm whatever the Taylors want me to be?" "We can do it differently this time," Nathan insisted. "Mother's already talking about setting up a trust fund for the baby, the best schools, the right connections." "The right connections?" Emma interrupted. "Like the connections she used to get me kicked out of my classes, to blacklist me from working." Nathan waved his hand dismissively. "That was just Mother being protective of the family name. She'll undo all that now that she knows about the baby. We can be a real family." Emma placed both hands on her belly, feeling her daughter kick as if responding to the tension in the room. "We are a real family," she said quietly. "My daughter and I. We don't need the Taylor name or the Taylor money. My daughter too." Nathan's voice hardened. "I have rights. Rights you gave up when you stood silent while your mother humiliated me?" Emma's voice rose slightly. "Rights you forfeited when you let her destroy my chances at an education. Those rights." "I've changed," Nathan insisted, taking a step forward. "Seeing you here, knowing we're having a baby, I want to make things right." Emma studied him carefully. He looked the same, handsome, polished, confident. But now she saw what she hadn't before, the way his eyes darted to the side when making promises, the careful calculation behind his charm. "No," she said simply. "You haven't changed, Nathan. You're still letting your mother orchestrate your life. The only difference is now you both see my baby as another piece to control." "Our baby," Nathan corrected, his facade cracking slightly. "And if you won't be reasonable about this, my lawyers will..." "Will what?" Daniel's voice came from the doorway where he had been quietly observing. "Will point out how you abandoned your pregnant wife, how your family actively worked to destroy her opportunities, how you're only showing interest now that you realize a baby might affect your company's public image." Nathan's face flushed. "This doesn't concern you, Rodriguez." Actually, it does, Daniel stepped into the room. As Emma's employer and the founder of the foundation funding her education, I have a vested interest in her success. And as someone who believes in protecting people from institutional bullying, I have a personal interest in making sure she and her child are safe from manipulation. The tension in the room was palpable as the two men faced each other. Emma remained seated, one hand still resting on her belly, watching as Nathan's confident facade crumbled further. "This isn't over," he finally said, turning to leave. "Mother's lawyers will be in touch." After he left, Emma released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Daniel moved to stand beside her chair, his presence solid and reassuring. "Thank you," she said softly, "for letting me handle that my way." Daniel smiled. "You didn't need my help, but I'm always happy to provide backup." Emma looked down at her belly, then back up at Daniel. "About that restaurant initiative you mentioned. Tell me more." The Arizona summer had reached its peak when Sophie came into the world, arriving 2 weeks early on a bright Tuesday morning. The hospital room was filled with sunlight and the scent of the roses Daniel had brought from Maria's garden. Emma's parents were there, along with Martha, who had become like family over the past months. Sophie was perfect. Tiny fingers, dark eyes, and a determination that showed itself in her strong grip and alert gaze. Emma held her daughter, marveling at how something so small could make her feel so incredibly strong. All the struggles of the past year seemed to fade away when she looked into those eyes. Daniel had insisted on providing the best medical care, using his connections to ensure Emma had access to the top maternity ward in Phoenix. He waited respectfully in the hallway during the delivery, then came in afterward, bearing not just flowers, but a small package wrapped in silver paper. "It was my mother's," he explained as Emma opened the gift to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with tiny butterfly charms. "She always said butterflies represent transformation. I thought, well, Sophie might like to have it someday." Emma felt tears well up in her eyes. Hormone-induced, she told herself, but knowing it was more than that. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, the way Daniel had become such an integral part of their lives, while always respecting boundaries, touched her deeply. The peaceful moment was interrupted by a commotion in the hallway. Patricia Taylor's voice carried through the door, demanding to see her granddaughter. Emma's father moved protectively toward the door, while Martha quickly called hospital security. Daniel's reaction surprised them all. Instead of calling his lawyers or confronting Patricia, he simply smiled at Emma and Sophie. "May I?" he asked, holding out his arms. Emma handed him the baby, watching as he cradled her with natural ease. When Patricia burst into the room, she found Daniel walking slowly with Sophie, speaking to her softly about the solar panels his company was installing at the children's hospital. The domestic scene stopped Patricia in her tracks. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, though her voice had lost some of its usual force. "This," Daniel said calmly, still focused on Sophie, "is a newborn baby who doesn't need to be exposed to stress or drama. She needs peace, love, and a chance to bond with her mother. Everything else can wait." Something in his tone, authoritative yet gentle, seemed to deflate Patricia's anger. She looked at Sophie, then at Emma, and for a moment her carefully maintained facade cracked. "She looks like Nathan did," she said softly. "So alert, so present." Emma watched as Patricia's expression shifted from hostility to something more complex. For the first time, she saw not the formidable Mrs. Taylor, but a woman who had spent her life trying to control everything and everyone around her, perhaps out of her own fears and insecurities. "Would you like to hold her?" Emma found herself asking, surprising everyone in the room, including herself. Patricia hesitated, then moved forward carefully. Daniel transferred Sophie to her grandmother's arms with practiced gentleness. The baby looked up at Patricia with those dark, curious eyes, and something remarkable happened. Patricia Taylor smiled, not her usual social smile, but a genuine expression of wonder. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I'm your grandmother." She looked at Emma, her voice losing its usual sharp edge. "She's beautiful." The moment didn't last long. Patricia soon remembered herself, handed Sophie back to Emma, and left with a stiff reminder about pending legal discussions. But something had changed. A crack had appeared in the wall between their worlds. Later that evening, after the other visitors had left, Daniel remained. He sat in the comfortable chair beside Emma's bed, Sophie sleeping peacefully in the hospital bassinet between them. They had fallen into a comfortable silence, the kind that comes from sharing something profound. "Thank you," Emma said finally, "for everything. The medical care, the security, the way you handled Patricia." Daniel shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Watching you these past months, seeing how you've handled everything with such grace and strength. You've taught me more about courage than anyone since my mother." Emma felt her heart skip a beat at the warmth in his voice. Their relationship had evolved so naturally that she hadn't allowed herself to examine it too closely, afraid of complicating the stability she had finally found. "Daniel," she started, but was interrupted by Sophie's hungry cry. As she attended to her daughter, she caught Daniel watching them with an expression that made her breath catch. "I should go," he said softly, standing. "You both need rest." "But Emma," he hesitated at the door. "Remember what I said about butterflies and transformation. Sometimes the most beautiful changes happen when we least expect them." As he left, Emma looked down at Sophie, then at the silver bracelet on the bedside table. She thought about transformations, from waitress to student, from victim to survivor, from single mother to... Whatever this new feeling was that made her heart race when Daniel looked at her that way. Sophie's tiny hand wrapped around her finger, and Emma smiled. "Your Aunt Maria was right about butterflies," she whispered to her daughter. "Sometimes you have to go through the dark to find your wings." The night settled around them, mother and daughter cocooned in the quiet hospital room, while outside the window, the lights of Phoenix twinkled like stars fallen to earth. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges: lawyers, custody discussions, career decisions. But for now, Emma felt at peace, knowing that whatever came next, she had the strength to face it. And perhaps, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, she wouldn't have to face it alone. The months following Sophie's birth brought changes that no one could have predicted. Emma had expected the Taylors to pursue an aggressive legal battle for custody, but Patricia's brief moment of connection with her granddaughter had sparked something unexpected. Instead of courtroom confrontations, there were carefully negotiated visits, always supervised, always on Emma's terms. Nathan, however, remained conspicuously absent. He sent expensive baby gifts through his lawyers, but made no attempt to see Sophie in person. Emma found herself oddly grateful for his distance. It made it easier to focus on building her new life. That life had taken on a rhythm that felt both challenging and deeply satisfying. Emma had resumed her online classes with renewed determination, often studying late into the night after Sophie had fallen asleep. Daniel had converted part of his home office into a nursery, insisting that Emma shouldn't have to choose between work and caring for her daughter. "My mother always said that success shouldn't require sacrifice of family," he explained one evening as he helped Emma set up a portable crib next to her desk. "She built this company while raising me alone. She would have wanted to pay it forward." The mention of Maria Rodriguez had become more frequent lately, always with a warmth that made Emma wish she had known the woman. The garden continued to bloom under Emma's care, and sometimes she would bring Sophie there, telling her stories about the strong women who had shaped their lives, her grandmother, Maria Rodriguez, and even, in her own complicated way, Patricia Taylor. It was in the garden, among the late autumn roses, that Emma finally admitted to herself what she had been feeling for Daniel. She was working on a presentation for the Sustainable Restaurant Initiative, Sophie napping in her carrier nearby, when Daniel joined her with 2 cups of coffee. "The project team loved your proposal," he said, settling beside her on the bench. "The pilot program is set to launch next month. You should be proud." Emma took a sip of coffee, prepared exactly how she liked it, she noticed. "I couldn't have done it without your support." "That's not true," Daniel replied firmly. "So you did this, Emma. Your ideas, your experience, your determination. I just provided the opportunity." She turned to look at him, really look at him, and found him already watching her with that intense, warm gaze that had become so familiar. The evening light caught the silver in his dark hair, and Emma felt her heart race with recognition of what had been building between them for months. Sophie chose that moment to wake, demanding attention with a series of increasingly insistent coos. Daniel reached her first, lifting her with practiced ease. "Hello, little butterfly," he murmured, using the nickname he had given her on the day she was born. Emma watched them together, This successful businessman who could command a boardroom, but chose to spend his evenings making silly faces at a baby, who had opened his home and his heart without asking anything in return, who looked at her daughter with genuine love. "Daniel," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." He turned to her, Sophie contentedly playing with his tie. "What is it?" But before Emma could continue, they were interrupted by the arrival of Angela, Daniel's assistant, looking uncharacteristically flustered. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been a situation at the Taylor restaurant." Daniel's expression turned serious, though his hold on Sophie remained gentle. "What kind of situation?" "Patricia Taylor has made some accusations about improper influence over Emma's business decisions. She's claiming you took advantage of her son's wife to gain insider knowledge of the restaurant industry." Emma felt her blood run cold. "That's ridiculous. I haven't had any connection to their business since they publicly humiliated you and tried to destroy your career." Daniel's voice was calm, but Emma could hear the anger underneath. "Angela, get me everything we have on the Taylor's business practices over the last 5 years and call the legal team." He turned to Emma, his expression softening. "I'm sorry. I should have expected something like this when your initiative started gaining attention." Emma stood, taking Sophie from his arms. "You have nothing to apologize for. The Taylors are trying to use me to hurt you, just like they tried to use me to maintain their social status." She straightened her shoulders. "But I'm not that same person anymore." Daniel watched her with admiration. "No, you're not. You're so much more." He hesitated, then added softly, "Emma, what were you going to tell me before?" She looked at him, this man who had become so much more than an employer or a friend, and made a decision. "I was going to tell you that I'm ready. Ready to stop letting the past define my future. Ready to trust again." She took a deep breath. "Ready to admit that what I feel for you is more than gratitude." Daniel's eyes widened, and for a moment Emma feared she had misread everything. Then he smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had become her favorite sight. "I've been waiting for you to be ready," he said simply. "I promised myself I wouldn't rush you, wouldn't take advantage of your vulnerable position. But Emma," he stepped closer, careful of Sophie between them, "you're not the only one who's been falling in love." Sophie chose that moment to grab at both their faces, bringing them closer together with surprising strength for a baby. They laughed, the tension of the moment breaking into something sweeter, more natural. "We'll deal with Patricia," Daniel said firmly, "together. But first..." He leaned in slowly, giving Emma plenty of time to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't want to. Their first kiss was gentle, mindful of the baby between them, but filled with promise. When they separated, Emma saw in Daniel's eyes the same hope she felt in her heart, not just for them, but for the family they could become. Sophie babbled happily, reaching for the butterfly bracelet that had become Emma's constant accessory. The setting sun painted the garden in gold, and Emma thought about transformations again, how sometimes they happen slowly, naturally, like flowers blooming in their own time. Together, she agreed, and knew that whatever storm Patricia Taylor was brewing, they would weather it as a family. The accusations from the Taylors sparked a media frenzy in Phoenix's business community. Local papers ran headlines questioning the integrity of Rodriguez Technologies' sustainable restaurant initiative, while business blogs speculated about Emma's role in the company. Through it all, Daniel remained steadfast, refusing to let the controversy derail either the project or their blossoming relationship. Emma sat in Daniel's home office, Sophie playing contentedly in her playpen nearby, as they reviewed the documentation his legal team had compiled. The evidence of the Taylors' own questionable business practices was substantial. Years of cutting corners on environmental regulations, questionable labor practices, and systematic discrimination in hiring. "We could destroy them with this," Daniel said quietly, closing the file. "But that's not who we are, is it?" Emma shook her head, watching Sophie stack her colorful blocks. "No, it's not. There has to be a better way." She turned to Daniel, an idea forming. "What if we offered them a partnership?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "A partnership with the people who are trying to discredit you?" "Not that kind of partnership," Emma explained, growing excited as the plan took shape. "What if we offered to help them transform their restaurants into sustainable businesses? Make them the flagship project for our initiative?" She stood, pacing the office as she warmed to her idea. Think about it. The Taylor's restaurants are some of the most prestigious in Phoenix. If they adopted our sustainable practices, other businesses would follow. Instead of fighting them, we make them pioneers. Daniel watched her with growing admiration. Turn their attack into an opportunity for collaboration. Emma Martinez, you are brilliant. He pulled her into his arms, careful not to disturb Sophie. But will Patricia Taylor ever agree? She might, Emma said thoughtfully, if we appeal to what she cares about most, the Taylor legacy. The meeting was arranged for the following week at Neutral Ground, a private room at the Desert Botanical Garden, where the sound of flowing water features provided a calming backdrop. Emma chose the location deliberately, remembering Patricia's moment of humanity in the hospital garden. Patricia arrived precisely on time, elegant as ever but with subtle signs of strain around her eyes. Nathan came with her, looking uncomfortable and avoiding Emma's gaze. Daniel sat beside Emma, projecting calm confidence, while Sophie napped in her carrier, oblivious to the tension around her. Before you begin your accusations, Emma said, surprising everyone by speaking first, I want you to think about something. What kind of legacy do you want to leave for Sophie? Patricia's carefully composed expression flickered. I'm thinking of her future. The Taylor name means something in this city. Yes, it does, Emma agreed. But what could it mean? Right now, Taylor Enterprises is known for tradition, for maintaining the status quo. But what if it could be known for leading Phoenix into the future? She opened her laptop, pulling up the presentation she had prepared. The restaurant industry is changing. Customers care about sustainability now. They want to know their food is ethically sourced, that the restaurants they support are environmentally responsible. As Emma walked them through the proposal, solar panels that would significantly reduce energy costs, water recycling systems that would save thousands of gallons per month, local sourcing initiatives that would support Arizona farmers, she saw Patricia's expression change from skepticism to interest. The initial investment would be substantial, Patricia noted, but her tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. Rodriguez Technologies would cover 40% of the conversion costs, Daniel interjected smoothly, and our projections show the savings would offset the remaining investment within 3 years. More importantly, Emma added, the Taylor restaurants would be recognized as industry leaders in sustainability. Your legacy wouldn't just be about maintaining tradition, it would be about shaping the future. Nathan, who had been silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke. The publicity would be incredible. Our clientele already care about environmental issues. This could open up a whole new market. Patricia studied Emma for a long moment. You've changed, she said finally. You're not the same girl who served drinks in our restaurant. No, I'm not, Emma agreed. I'm a businesswoman now, a mother, and someone who sees opportunities where others might see only conflicts. She glanced at Sophie, then back at Patricia. I'm offering you a chance to be part of your granddaughter's future in a meaningful way. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Patricia looked at Sophie, then at the presentation still displayed on the screen. The Taylor name on an environmental initiative, she mused. My husband would have called it radical. A small smile touched her lips. He also said putting French cuisine on the menu was radical. She straightened in her chair, every inch the businesswoman. I want to see detailed financial projections, and our legal team will need to review everything. Of course, Daniel agreed. Our teams can begin working together immediately. As they wrapped up the meeting, Patricia paused beside Sophie's carrier. The baby had woken and was watching the proceedings with curious eyes. She has the Taylor determination, Patricia observed, then added surprisingly, but she has your spirit, Emma. Perhaps that's not a bad combination. After the Taylors left, Daniel pulled Emma close. You never cease to amaze me, he murmured into her hair. You just turned a potential disaster into a triumph. Emma leaned into his embrace, watching Sophie play with her butterfly bracelet. I learned from the best. Your mother must have been an incredible woman. She was, Daniel agreed, and she would have adored you. He turned Emma to face him. Move in with me. Not just in the apartment above the garage, here, in the main house. You and Sophie. Make this your home officially. Emma felt her heart swell. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, Daniel said. Except maybe about loving you. Sophie chose that moment to demand attention, her small voice echoing through the garden. They both laughed, the sound mixing with the fountain's gentle splash and the rustle of desert flowers. "Yes," Emma said simply, and in that word was a future brighter than any she had dared to imagine when she first walked into La Mesa restaurant those many months ago. The transformation of the first Taylor restaurant began in early spring, when the desert was abloom with wildflowers. Emma stood with Daniel watching as the installation team mounted the first solar panels on the roof of La Mesa restaurant. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. This was where her journey had begun, and now it was where a new chapter was starting. The project had generated significant buzz in the business community. Local news covered the partnership between Rodriguez Technologies and Taylor Enterprises, highlighting the innovative approach to sustainable dining. Emma found herself giving interviews, her natural eloquence and genuine passion for the project making her a compelling spokesperson. "You should be proud," Daniel said as they reviewed the latest press coverage in his, now there, home office. "This was your vision." Emma smiled, watching Sophie toddle around the room with increasing confidence. At 15 months old, their daughter was a bundle of energy, curiosity, and determination. "Our vision," she corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you believing in me." The past few months had been a whirlwind of activity. Moving into the main house with Daniel had felt natural, as if their lives were always meant to merge this way. Sophie's nursery now occupied what had been Maria Rodriguez's sitting room, the space filled with sunshine and the scent of roses from the garden below. Their relationship had deepened too, growing stronger with each shared challenge and triumph. Daniel's quiet strength and unwavering support had helped Emma flourish, while her innovative thinking and compassionate approach to business had inspired him to expand his company's social impact initiatives. Even their relationship with the Taylors had evolved into something unexpectedly positive. Patricia had thrown herself into the sustainable restaurant project with characteristic determination, lending her considerable influence to promote the initiative throughout Phoenix's business community. Nathan had finally begun to show genuine interest in his daughter, though always under Patricia's supervision. He seemed humbled by how events had unfolded, particularly by Emma's success, and the way she had transformed what could have been a bitter legal battle into a profitable collaboration. "The latest energy consumption reports from La Mesa are in," Daniel announced, reviewing his tablet. "The solar installation has already reduced their electricity costs by 30%. Emma nodded, making notes for her next project meeting. "We should have the water recycling system fully operational by next month, and the local sourcing program has been surprisingly successful. Turns out Phoenix diners love knowing their food comes from Arizona farms." She was interrupted by Sophie, attempting to climb into her lap, clutching her worn copy of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, a gift from Patricia that had quickly become a favorite. "Story time, Mama," Sophie demanded, her dark eyes bright with anticipation. Daniel watched them with a soft smile. "Speaking of hungry," he said, "I made dinner reservations for tonight. Something special." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Special? What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to treat my two favorite people to dinner?" But there was something in his smile that made Emma's heart skip a beat. That evening, they sat at a private table at the newly renovated La Mesa restaurant. The space had been transformed, incorporating natural materials and living walls of desert plants. Large windows offered views of the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Sophie, dressed in a tiny sundress patterned with butterflies, was being unusually well behaved, as if sensing the importance of the moment. She sat in her high chair, contentedly arranging her food into patterns, while Emma and Daniel talked about their day. After the main course, Daniel grew quiet, his expression turning serious. "Emma," he began, "when you first came to work for me, I thought I was just hiring someone to manage my household. I had no idea you would end up managing my heart as well." Emma felt her pulse quicken as Daniel reached into his pocket. "These past months, watching you grow into your potential, seeing you turn challenges into opportunities, falling more in love with you every day. You've shown me what true strength looks like. And Sophie," he smiled at the toddler who was watching them with curious eyes, "Sophie has taught me what it means to be a father, even though I had no right to expect that gift." He stood, then to Emma's surprise, knelt beside her chair. "I know we've done everything in an unusual order, but then nothing about our story has been conventional." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a ring set with a butterfly-shaped diamond. "Emma Martinez, will you marry me?" Emma felt tears welling in her eyes as she looked at the man kneeling before her, this kind, brilliant man who had helped her find her wings when she needed them most. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes." Sophie clapped her hands in delight as Daniel slipped the ring onto Emma's finger. Around them, the restaurant burst into applause. Emma realized belatedly that their entire family was there, hidden in the surrounding tables. Her parents, Martha, Angela, even Patricia, all wearing matching smiles. Later that night, after Sophie had been put to bed clutching her butterfly bracelet, Emma and Daniel stood in Maria's garden. The desert air was cool, heavy with the scent of night-blooming flowers. "Your mother would have loved this," Emma said softly, touching the ring that caught the starlight. "She did love it," Daniel replied. "This was her ring. The butterfly design was her idea. She had it made years ago, told me to save it for someone special." He pulled Emma close. "Someone who understood that the most beautiful transformations often come from the most challenging circumstances." Emma thought about transformations, from waitress to business leader, from single mother to part of a loving family, from someone who had once felt trapped by circumstances to someone who had learned to soar. "I love you," she said simply, and felt Daniel's smile against her hair. Above them, the desert stars twinkled like promises, while in the garden, Maria's roses bloomed in the moonlight, witnesses to another beautiful beginning. The wedding preparations transformed the Rodriguez estate into a showcase of sustainable celebration. Emma had insisted that their ceremony should reflect the values they promoted through their business initiatives, and Daniel enthusiastically agreed. Solar-powered lighting illuminated the garden paths. Local flowers filled recycled glass vases, and the menu featured dishes created entirely from Arizona-sourced ingredients. "Your mother would have loved this," Martha said, as she helped Emma adjust her wedding dress. A stunning creation of sustainable silk that incorporated subtle butterfly motifs in its embroidery. "She would have been so proud of everything you've built." Emma smiled at her reflection, touching the butterfly bracelet that had become her signature piece. At 20 months old, Sophie was serving as the flower girl, her own tiny dress matching her mother's. She practiced throwing rose petals, giggling as they floated to the ground. Patricia Taylor had surprised everyone by offering to help with the wedding planning, bringing her expertise in event management while respectfully following Emma's vision for sustainability. The two women had developed an unexpected rapport over the past months, their shared business acumen bridging the gap that social prejudice had once created. The Sustainable Restaurant Initiative has expanded to 15 locations, Patricia reported during one of their planning sessions. The Chamber of Commerce wants to feature it as a model for business transformation. "You've started quite a movement, Emma." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, the desert air crisp with early spring freshness. Maria's roses were in full bloom, as if offering their blessing to the celebration. Emma stood in what had been Maria's bedroom, now her and Daniel's master suite, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. A knock at the door revealed her father, his eyes misty as he saw her in her wedding dress. "Mijita," he said softly, "I was wrong all those years ago. Education, career, you showed us that a woman can have it all, and more importantly, that she deserves it all." The ceremony was set in the garden where their story had truly begun. Guests gathered on chairs made from reclaimed wood, while an arch of desert flowers marked the spot where Emma and Daniel would exchange their vows. Sophie preceded her mother down the aisle, solemnly dropping rose petals with occasional pauses to admire their fall. Daniel waited beneath the arch, his eyes never leaving Emma as she walked toward him on her father's arm. His vows, spoken in both English and Spanish out of respect for Emma's heritage, brought tears to every eye in the garden. "Emma," he began, "you came into my life like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, showing me that the most beautiful transformations often require the most courage. You've not only transformed your own life, but helped transform our community. You've shown me that true strength lies not in power over others, but in empowering others to rise." Emma's vows spoke of second chances and the power of believing in oneself. "Daniel, you saw me not as who I was, but as who I could become. You gave me wings when I needed them most, and then you gave me the space to learn to fly on my own. With you and Sophie, I've found not just love, but partnership, purpose, and the joy of building something meaningful together." As they exchanged rings, Sophie reached up to touch her mother's butterfly bracelet, a gesture that had become her habit when seeking comfort or sharing joy. The moment captured perfectly how their past, present, and future had woven together into something beautiful and strong. The reception that followed was a celebration not just of their love, but of the community they had built. Restaurant owners who had adopted their sustainable practices mingled with environmental activists and business leaders. Emma's parents chatted with Patricia Taylor about expanding the local sourcing program to support more Arizona farmers. Nathan, who had gradually found his own path separate from his mother's influence, attended with his new girlfriend, an environmental lawyer who had helped develop the legal framework for their sustainable business initiatives. He seemed more relaxed, more genuine than Emma had ever seen him during their marriage. As the evening progressed, Daniel led Emma to the dance floor for their first dance. The song they had chosen was about transformation and growth, about finding strength in vulnerability and beauty in change. Sophie watched from her grandfather's arms, clapping in delight as her parents swayed to the music. "Look," Daniel whispered, gesturing toward the garden where the setting sun had attracted a group of actual butterflies to Maria's roses. "My mother always said butterflies appear when change brings blessings." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder, taking in the perfect moment. "She sent us quite a few blessings, didn't she?" "She did," Daniel agreed, pulling her closer. "Though I think you brought quite a few of your own." As they danced, Emma caught glimpses of their guests, Martha wiping away happy tears, Angela discussing business with some industry leaders, her parents beaming with pride. Even Patricia Taylor seemed genuinely moved by the celebration, especially when Sophie ran to her for a hug, calling her abuela, as she had recently begun doing. The evening ended with a sustainable twist on wedding traditions. Instead of throwing rice, guests released native butterfly-friendly flower seeds into the garden, ensuring that future springs would bring new blooms and new butterflies to celebrate their love. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Sophie had fallen asleep clutching her beloved copy of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Emma and Daniel stood in the quiet garden. The solar lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and the desert air was heavy with the scent of roses. "Happy?" Daniel asked, though he already knew the answer from her radiant smile. "More than happy," Emma replied. "Grateful for every step of the journey, even the difficult ones. They all led us here." Above them, a lone butterfly danced in the moonlight, its wings catching the silver light like promises of more beautiful transformations yet to come. 5 years had passed since the wedding in Maria's garden, and the roses still bloomed as beautifully as ever. Emma stood in her office at Rodriguez Technologies' new headquarters, a state-of-the-art sustainable building that served as a model for green architecture in Phoenix. The wall of windows offered a perfect view of the desert landscape, where solar panels gleamed in the morning sun. On her desk, family photos told the story of those 5 years. Sophie's first day of kindergarten, the birth of her little brother Miguel 2 years ago, family vacations where business trips merged seamlessly with precious personal time. The butterfly bracelet, now accompanied by a matching necklace Daniel had given her on their first anniversary, still graced her wrist. The Sustainable Restaurant Initiative had grown beyond anyone's expectations, spreading from Phoenix across the Southwest. Emma's innovative approach to combining environmental responsibility with profitable business practices had earned her recognition as one of the region's most influential business leaders. She had completed her business degree with honors and was now pursuing her MBA, all while helping other women break through the barriers she had once faced. "Mrs. Rodriguez," her assistant called through the intercom. "They're ready for you in the conference room." Emma gathered her materials for the presentation, pausing to straighten a photo of Daniel with Sophie and Miguel in the garden. The image captured a perfect moment. Daniel teaching Sophie about solar energy while Miguel, still wobbly on his feet, chased butterflies through the roses. The conference room was filled with familiar faces. Patricia Taylor sat near the head of the table, her once critical eyes now warm with genuine respect. Their relationship had evolved into a powerful partnership, combining Patricia's traditional business acumen with Emma's innovative vision. "Today marks the 100th restaurant to join our Sustainable Business Network," Emma began her presentation. What started as a single solar panel installation at La Mesa restaurant has grown into a movement that's changing how the hospitality industry thinks about environmental responsibility. She clicked through slides showing the impact of their initiative: dramatically reduced energy costs, thousands of gallons of water saved, tons of waste diverted from landfills. But more than the statistics, she emphasized the human element. The communities strengthened by local sourcing programs, the families benefiting from cleaner air and water, the next generation learning about environmental stewardship through their example. And we're just getting started, she concluded. The Maria Rodriguez Foundation for Sustainable Business Education will launch next month, offering scholarships to young women pursuing careers in environmental entrepreneurship. After the presentation, Patricia approached her. "Maria would have been so proud," she said softly, "not just of the business success, but of the family you and Daniel have built." She hesitated, then added, "And I'm proud too, Emma. Proud to call you family." Emma squeezed the older woman's hand, remembering how far they had come from those first hostile encounters. "Family is what we make it," she said, thinking of how Sophie now had 3 grandmothers, her mother's mother, Patricia, and Maria's memory kept alive through the garden and the values she had instilled in Daniel. That evening, Emma arrived home to find Daniel in the garden with the children. Sophie, now 6 and already showing signs of her mother's determination and her father's compassion, was explaining to Miguel how butterflies helped flowers grow. The little boy watched in wonder as a monarch butterfly landed on a nearby rose. "Mama," Sophie called out, "did you tell them about the school gardens?" Emma smiled, joining her family. The latest extension of their initiative involved helping schools create sustainable gardens, teaching children about environmental responsibility through hands-on experience. Sophie's own school had been the pilot program, and she had thrown herself into the project with characteristic enthusiasm. "Yes, sweetie, everyone's very excited about expanding the program." She settled onto the garden bench beside Daniel, who immediately wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "I heard the presentation was a success," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Not that I had any doubts." Emma watched as their children played among the roses that Maria had planted so many years ago. The garden had expanded under her care, new varieties joining the original blooms, just as their family had grown and flourished. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" she asked Daniel. "If I hadn't taken that waitressing job at La Mesa? If you hadn't stood up for me that day?" Daniel considered for a moment. "I think some things are meant to be, not in a passive way, but in the way that courage and kindness naturally create opportunities for good things to grow." He gestured to the garden around them. "Like these roses, Maria planted them, but they needed the right conditions to thrive. You needed the right conditions to thrive too, but you also had to be brave enough to reach for the sun." Sophie ran up to them then, Miguel toddling behind her. "Mama, Papa, look!" She held up a chrysalis she had found attached to one of the rose bushes. "Can we watch it? Teacher says it takes about 10 days for the butterfly to come out." "Of course," Emma smiled. "We'll check on it every day." As they gathered around the chrysalis, Emma felt a profound sense of contentment. Her journey from waitress to business leader, from someone else's wife to her own person, from single mother to part of a loving family, it had all been a kind of metamorphosis. Like the butterfly waiting to emerge from its chrysalis, she had needed time, strength, and the right support to spread her wings. The phoenix sun set behind them, painting the sky in brilliant colors that reflected off the solar panels on their roof. In the garden, roses bloomed and butterflies danced, while a family built on love, respect, and shared values looked to the future with hope and confidence. Emma touched her butterfly bracelet, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Some transformations," she said softly, "never really end. They just keep creating more beauty." Daniel pulled her close, their children secure in their embrace, as the evening star appeared above the desert horizon. In Maria's garden, where their story had begun and continued to unfold, the roses nodded in the gentle breeze, their perfume a sweet reminder that love, like nature, would always find a way to bloom.